This is the word. I'm glad we're getting back into it. It's been quite a while with my school semester starting and trying to get back into that. But we are here. It is September, and we have some fun topics today. Today, I have the word regular contributor, Annika Wolf. Annika, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you.
And Charlotte, back for a second time. Thank you for coming today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
So, the first topic that we are going to talk about is, obviously, I'm sure both of you know who Ariel Castro is, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Well, he does share a last name with somebody else who is famous, and that brings us to this article from Lawsip. It says, Fidel Castro is probably rolling in his grave, despite still being alive. Turns out many ignorant Twitter users confused Ariel Castro's death for Cuba's Fidel Castro. After news hit about Ariel Castro's suicide in his jail cell, the hashtag #FreeCuba started trending. Hate on Fidel all you want, but a rapist and convicted kidnapper he is not. And I have both examples from this article and other examples that I found on Twitter of this #FreeCuba hashtag. Somebody posted on Twitter, Ariel Castro found dead. I imagine the commie choked on his cigars. Another person tweeted, Cuban dictator Ariel Castro is dead. Now I can finally have some cigars. So a lot of cigar-themed ones. And then another person who was, mocking this sort of said, want to lose faith in American education, search Free Cuba. And there are many others. Some that make fun of it, some that actually believe it, some people saying they can't believe Fidel Castro died today. So, obviously Fidel Castro was the leader of Cuba from 1959 to 2008. Ariel Castro was not. And, but we do know it has been well publicized over the past, decade. We all kind of know Americans are not too good when it comes to international issues, when it comes to geography, when it comes to foreign...
When it comes to national issues, forget international.
What is it with America sometimes? And, this is one example, but there was another one, like I'm sure you guys have seen, with, I've seen these on-the-street sort of interviews, and this was in the...
Yeah, Glenn Beck does them. I heard him today, as a matter of fact.
Glenn Beck does them, but also, Jay Leno does them, and they're hilarious. Yeah. And people will say, he'll give them a pen and he'll say, stick this on Iraq, and somebody will stick it on Australia. What is it about America today that leads to this kind of, this lack of geographical and international knowledge?
They don't teach people. They don't educate them. They teach them how to pass a test.
And you think that extends even to the social studies classes?
Oh, I'll give you an example. When I was listening to the Glenn Beck one today, I was driving and I just happened to turn it on. People didn't even know who the Secretary of State was. They didn't know how many countries were in North America.
Oh, no.
Wow. I was listening to this, and I'm like, they didn't know what the word ally meant.
What? Charlotte, what do you think that it is about America that leads to this kind of insular mindset?
Years ago, when, say, somebody else in California did something like in the 60s, California designed, they're the first people to design open space classrooms.
Yes.
And then, that idea or concept made its way across the country when all these educators get together for conferences or whatever, and then they want to replicate that, but perhaps they don't have enough money in their budget or blah, blah, blah. So when you get all the way to the East Coast, they have open space, but it wasn't designed as it was meant to be, and that's why kids are learning with noise in the background and this and that and the other. Yes. And then over the years in the 70s and 80s, any kind of national concept or idea that came out, people tried to grab parts of it or pieces of it. Look how many transitions our schools have been through. What is it called? There's No Child Left Behind.
We had No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, and now the Common Core curriculum.
Yeah. And before that, there was all kinds of things. And what they're doing in the curriculum, too, is Like, remember when Nancy Reagan had Just Say No?
Yes.
I mean, they spent so much money on, like, high schools had the parking lot with the street signs that said Just Say No.
Yes.
All this money directed toward something that people weren't skilled enough to even deal with. But they used to say, do it in the school, do it in the school, do it in the school.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of resentment in the schools, too, that they're not being paid well enough.
Yeah, I mean, and what about when we go back, to talking about the educational system and how it's implemented with the, these different programs? Do you guys think that the emphasis on testing and having to show cut and dry black and white results plays into it, Annika?
Absolutely. They're not even really testing the kids' education. They're testing how well a kid can take a test.
And they would give us, and they knew, because they've tied the budget to it. I was in school in the period where, the initial period in which No Child Left Behind was implemented, they would tell us the answers to the tests.
Really?
They would give us the answers to the test. Because but you have to understand, if they didn't do well, the weight of the school budget was on these poor teachers' shoulders, and that is not how it should be.
Yeah.
They should be being able to be focused on their job and not attaining funding for their school. And so, as far as this issue of just American students and American people in general not knowing about the greater world, are there any reasons, do you think, outside of education, outside of the schoolhouse, that cause even American adults to be totally ignorant about other countries in the world? No. But it's like, I feel like, during Hillary Clinton's tenure, when she was the secretary, I feel like because she was going to, she was in a new country, it seemed like, every week, it's like, wouldn't people say, even people who didn't know, say, Egypt existed, wouldn't they be able to see that and be like, oh, that's another country, that's another, like, I feel like that would give them some sort of awareness, but I don't know. I mean, and even unfortunately, studies of cable news, which is an issue that we will go to later on in the program, it shows that people who are consumers of cable news, if that is their primary or only source of information, they're really not much more educated or knowledgeable about the world than people who just ignore it.
Right, part of the reason Hillary was in the news so much is because she was going to run for president.
Well, and because her celebrity status was...
right now.
But also, she had the dual advantage, advantages, disadvantages, above John Kerry, in the sense that her celebrity was cemented by both a sex scandal, which we as an American society are fascinated with, but also she was the first lady, So anything else you want to say about that? Just expressing your indignation at America?
I think part of it is we as Americans, we don't care about learning about anybody else because we're so busy tooting our own horn.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's a big part of it too. Whereas I know I was, but I didn't know if you were forced to take them or not now.
Oh, absolutely. But that doesn't, me and Charlotte, case in point.
Yeah, right.
We can't speak Spanish. But, and I agree with both of the points that you guys said, to Charlotte's point about the curriculum and the budget. Again, as long as teachers would be occupied with other issues, no matter what those other issues would be, then you will see that they will be distracted from teaching, and that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And if the curriculum that they're teaching for the test, because that is now the teacher's goal, they're just kind of test-answer dispensaries, if that curriculum...
I don't know if you're aware, but like to do, Xeroxes and things like that, teachers only get a certain amount of paper and a certain amount...
And that is not okay.
So they can't even get the students what they need to learn.
But think about how much paper is used in the dissemination of testing manuals and materials. It is ridiculous.
Well, you know how much money as a parent, I probably just spent almost $100 at the beginning of school because we have to supplement that vocational tech class. His his science or biology class.
Yes.
But last year when he was in 8th grade, we had to provide the glasses.
I think it's interesting that, historically since the 1970s, the state has receded in funding a lot of this extraneous stuff, and parents are expected to pick up the tab for it. Not everyone's parents can do that, and even on parents who are well off, that is a strain. If your kid is in a public school, they should not have to be thinking about giving supplies to the public school. But I find it very odd, at the same time as the state is receding from those funding areas, they are implementing more control over the testing and requirements, which I find odd. It's like, and as to the point that you made a little bit earlier, Annika, we've talked about this before, this idea of American exceptionalism and we're number one, that kind of idea, like I don't need to know about the stinking rest of the world. That is what does in great empires, when they have this hubris, Come back and talk about a cluster of bizarre boy band related stories, okay?
Oh my gosh, okay.